sir.
Yeah.
Please, can we be seated? Hello, hello. Yes, sir.
Really? Okay. Then I don't know whether with the question of
Good evening and welcome to The Candidates, a four-part presidential town hall series brought to you by Daria Media and the Nigerian Television Authority with the support of the MacArthur Foundation. These town halls represent an opportunity for you to get to know the candidates who want your votes so they can lead Nigeria for the next 4 years. We are live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, on Wazobia Television, Ork TV, Trust TV, and Impact Africa Television. You can also hear this program on all Radio Nigeria across the country, and we are streaming live online at dtv.media and nta.ng live. Today, we are in conversation with the candidates of the ruling All Progressives Congress, the APC. Retired General Muhammad Buhari was born on 17th of December 1942 and is currently serving as the Commander-in-Chief of Nigerian Armed Forces and the President. He's a retired Major General in the Nigerian Army and previously served as the nation's head of state from 31st December 1980 to 27th August 1985, following a military coup. In December 2014, he emerged as the presidential candidate of All Progressives Congress for the March 2015 general election. He won those elections, defeating the incumbent president, Goodluck Jonathan. This marked the first time in the history of Nigeria that an incumbent president on Twitter at the Daria Media or Facebook at the Daria Media, Instagram at Daria Media, and now throughout these programs, handles people on your hashtag. Otherwise, questions may get lost. Again, but to tell your friends and family in the diaspora that they can watch this program without stream, dtv.media and NTA. Now, tell me, President, you've been ruling Nigeria now. Want Nigerians to another opportunity to another. Why?
well,
earlier, political party. My party recommends me to its executive. I will contest. That same time, quite among members of the party. So those who felt very strongly about it left the party. Why? I felt that three fundamental objectives we campaigned on 2000 are still relevant. Want my Nigerians see when we started 2000 where we are now, what we have been able to do in between time of 3.5 years, the resources, time available.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. Vice President, you want to add a little bit more? Tell us a little bit more about why you think the Nigerian public should nominate you and Mr. President again to serve for another 4 years?
I think so. I think Mr. President has already pointed out that we campaigned on three fundamental issues, namely the economy, corruption, fight against corruption. And in those three respects, we believe that we have laid a very strong foundation. Very strongly believe that we are on to much more progress if given a second. I very strongly take the view that the period of 3.5 years, in particular, has been one where we have managed to turn around a lot of what was inherited in the previous 16 years, were, in my view, a period which a lot of revenue came in, very little. And we believe that the foundations we've laid in agriculture, elaborate on that. In infrastructure, foundations we've laid there really deserve a second time for completion. I'm sure we'll come around to those specific issues.
Absolutely. But you talked about the three things you fought the first elections with and which you think you've done well. So maybe if we could take them one by one and see whether we can have a conversation. Let's start with corruption, because that was a big thing that the president fought on. There's a perception that the general corruption fight that we under is a little bit skewed, and that it focuses on people who are not pro-government or who are not friends of this government, belong to a party. How do you respond to those allegations?
Which allegation?
That your corruption fight focuses only on people who are opponents of the APC, who are not friends of the.
Well, I think that's not a fair criticism of the bill, because it's not backed by facts. I don't think there is anybody that has been pointed out corrupt in the last dispute, which we look the other direction. I think I can best illustrate my experiences on. I came in uniform in 19. We arrested the president, the vice president, governors, the ministers, them in detention and said they are guilty until they can prove themselves innocent. We put committees, investigation, almost based on geopolitical zones. And those that were investigated, except 2 Nigerians, late Yamin Usman, a junior minister of Education, late Adam Chiroma, governor of Central Bank, the minister of Finance, We are the only people who are found to have managed their resources with integrity. But I myself eventually was arrested and detained. And those people who were found guilty of misappropriating public funds were given back what they were appropriating through thorough committee investigation. It's not just an allegation. They were given the chance. So I decided to come now, and now I have to be careful. People are just not arrested like that. When they hold positions, if they made a wrong declaration, it's just one point. They didn't mention how many houses they have in Europe and America or Asia. They didn't mention companies they floated, contracts they gave them. It's eventually uncovered. They are faced in court with the documents.
So, Mr. President, you're here obviously referring to the case of the Chief Justice of the Federation. Or who are you referring to? Is that an example? Because you talked about people who are not declaring. This is what is topical now, and I'm wondering whether that is the case you're.
Sorry, you have to repeat that question.
Okay, let me ask it another way. You've talked about people who do wrongdoing and being investigated. There are cases of people that are thought to be very close to you. An example is the former secretary to the federal government, Malam Babachi, allegedly accused taking money that was meant for IDPs and awarding contracts to himself. As far as we know, the EFCC has not investigated him, even though he has lost his job. He is one of few other examples of people who are in government who've got petitions against them in front of the EFCC, and the EFCC is not investigating. And the general perception is that the reason why those investigations are not taking place is because these are people who are either close to the government who are in government.
Well, I clear about, but can mention that.
I'll give you an example.
Yes.
I said Babachir, the former SGF, the Minister of Housing, Mr. Raji Fashola, is a petition in front of the EFCC by an NGO. And as far as I know, that has not been investigated. So I'm trying to understand whether you are aware of these things and if this is part of, as it is alleged, part of a policy not to investigate people in government.
Well, we can't be fair to. I told you why I have to be careful. And if anybody, the public should help us. If there are strong allegations, backed up by evidence, bank accounts, names of companies floated, contracts awarded, then we take them for the courts through EFCC and ICP. And we have to trust the system and allow them to complete the investigation. If we just take people in, as we did during the military, lock them up, this system, the present system, multi-party democracy, does not approve that. If you accuse any person, you have to produce the evidence in court for him to be prosecuted. So if there is strong allegation, the government may decide to ask people to go, like the former government you mentioned, asking him to go. But if anybody...
But the question is, after asking him to go, how come he hasn't been prosecuted? Which is what Nigerians are wondering. If there was a strong enough evidence to ask him to go, it means there's an indication that maybe he did something wrong. Why hasn't he been presented before a court and charged with corrupt practices?
I think the matter is already before the EFCC. And I believe that, in fact, the directive has been issued regarding all persons who have cases for the I'm sure that you will find that each and every person who has an allegation against them will investigate, will be put on trial, without a doubt. Each person.
Okay, let me specifically come to you because the National Assembly has also raised what they say are concerns about money that was misspent within the presidential unit on the Northeast. You chair that unit, and they say you basically appropriated money without going through due protocol. How do you respond to that?
I think the allegation was that some money, which was approved for the emergency intervention in was without approval.
Yes.
But that's not correct at all. We pointed out very clearly that while I was acting president, sums of money questioned were duly appropriated. As a matter of fact, if they had looked, and we've shown all the evidence, and I do not think that we have since got a reply, what we were able to show them was very clearly this. The CBN, as the Central Bank of Nigeria, controls the strategic reserves, agricultural strategy. They are the ones who would raise a memo, me, saying specifically what was required for the Northeast intervention and where the funds will be taken from. The funds were taken from what is called a rice levy, which is a duly appropriated fund. And after that, I then approved the sum, properly appropriated.
Are you at all concerned about some of the allegations raised about that, the spending with that particular fund, the way they are running the agency?
I'm not at all concerned about it. I believe that, unfortunately, a good part of that was politicized, and allegations are flying here and there. That was a very comprehensive, very, very comprehensive. What happened was that after the World Food Program had said that they were no longer able to feed the numbers they were feeding, there was a need for us to intervene because hundreds of people were coming out.
So it was an emergency situation.
Oh, yes, it was an emergency situation. And then what then happened was, we then took a very detailed process. I said it started from the central bank. Central bank, we have 4 companies that hold our strategic, and they are major grain companies: Olam, Walcott, Dangote. If there's one more, they hold the strategic. So everything was done properly. The Nigerian Armed Forces, the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, all of them, the police, all of them were involved in the distribution process, including the Air Force. Each service chief sent a senior representative involved in the process of distribution. We then went a further step. We created an office in Maiduguri where we have a tracking device. We could actually see the the trucks, as they went from point to point from our offices in Maiduguri. We then included members of the National Assembly from the Northeast Zone to ensure that they were carried along and they understood what
so
exactly.
So why do you think the National Assembly would make such a serious allegation?
Well, the National Assembly, as you know, I think that what they were saying, and the reason why they were saying whatever they said, will be left to them. But I think that as far as we are concerned, we went through the appropriate process and we did the distribution appropriately. I don't know exactly. If you look at the entire report, the only line of that report where there was any kind of allegation, at least against me, was to say the money was not duly appropriated by the National Assembly. But we proved that that money was duly appropriated by them. And there was no further allegation, as far as I could see, concerning my party as acting president.
Now, the National Assembly, in talking about, quoted Section 80, subsection 4, which basically says that you can't appropriate any money, whether it's from the consolidated account, anything considered public funds, without going to the National Assembly. And in their view, that process didn't take place.
The point I'm making is that their view was absolutely wrong because it wasn't based on facts. We provided for them evidence that they obviously did not have at the time when they were making it. And that evidence was the fact that the Central Bank of Nigeria was the one that originated the memorandum from an appropriated fund. That fund is called the rice levy. The rice levy is a line item in our budget, so it's already appropriated by the National Assembly. So I think that they were wrong.
Yeah, let's open up the conversation. So, town hall, I don't want to. And there are two. Call maybe 2, 3. Please introduce yourself, ask your question, go back and we'll come back to Mr. President and Mr. So the gentleman at the other end, then there's a lady right at the gentleman in brown hat. Okay.
Good evening, Your Excellency. My name is Usman Suleiman Jawan, lawyer. My question is really to Mr. President, the issue of Al-Majiri. Now, this issue, Al-Majiri. Al-Majiri, yeah. Your Excellency, this, I believe, is a major challenge for some part of it. Now, sure, so many don't believe something we should continue to do. So what's your opinion on that? And I strongly think it's important, Your Excellency, if you can do something about it. Now, this is because we've seen it, that you're one of those that can make difficult decisions and can be accepted in Nigeria.
Okay.
The fuel subsidy, for example.
No,
so I do believe. Now I do believe. Yeah, I do believe if Mr. President can do something about it, I'm sure it can have that acceptance.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. Please come. Yes.
Good evening, Mr. President. My question is this. How soon will be
Please,
national...
Can you introduce yourself?
My name is Usman Abu Bakar. How soon will be national livestock development ban will be implemented first to address the challenges? Thank you.
What,
livestock.
Huh? Livestock, national livestock.
I will talk. I will talk about that. I'm the chairman of the. I will talk. What is it? National Livestock
Thank
Plan.
you, sir.
Oh, livestock plan.
My name is Richard Ezekiel. I stand here on behalf of 25 million persons with disabilities in Nigeria. I just want to ask how far about the disability bill?
Okay.
How far about?
With the disability bill. The disability.
Disability.
We'll take one more question.
About the disability bill.
We'll come back
the bill.
to the president.
Good evening, Mr. President. My name is Omotaya Motusho, a television broadcaster. I remember when I interviewed you about 2.5 years ago, you did mention a very, very germane point, that if we don't fight corruption, corruption will kill us. I stand here today, Mr. President, with a heavy heart to let you know that the corruption that you are fighting, some Nigerians are not supporting, and we must support you. What caused the heavy heart? If we had been fighting corruption collectively with you, we would have been able to save some good funds to divert onto other sectors of our economy. On December 22nd, I lost a close sister of mine with 2 younger sisters in an accident due to bad roads. As a journalist, I know this administration is doing their best, but we do not have enough funds to be able to tidy bad roads that we have.
Thank you
she
very
died
much.
with 2 other sisters, 3
you.
daughters of 1 mother on Tebuode Ore, Benin Road. Chief Mrs. Henrietta Vani and Francisca and the other lady. 3 of them, they are my close relatives. Lost them in that accident. If we fight corruption collectively, I am advising every Nigerian, join this administration to fight corruption.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I have to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll come back to you and Mr. President so that we can answer the question. Yeah, let's take a quick break. Please don't go.
The Candidates, a presidential town hall co-production between Daria Media and NTA, supported by the MacArthur Foundation. Kingsley Moghalu and running mate Omar Getso of the Young Progressive Party. Muhammadu Buhari and running mate Yemi Osibajo of the All Progressives Congress. Omoyele Sowore and running mate Rabiu Ahmed Rufai of the African Action Congress. Atiku Abubakar and running mate Peter Obi of the People's Democratic Party. Moderator, Kadria Ahmed. Next town hall, Wednesday, 23rd January, with Omoyele Sowore and running mate Rabiu Ahmed Rufai of the African Action Congress. Town hall venue.
But the right to vote is not a license to kill. Democracy is government of the people, by the people, for the people, where majority carries the vote. It is not a do-or-die affair. Say no to violence. No weapon at the poll. Your permanent voter's card, not a dagger. Your future is in your hands. You have the right to leave. Don't cause trouble. Vote wisely.
I see the wisdom in your eyes. I feel the courage in your heart. You carry strength in your work, Papa. Compassion. Watch. I see the love in your smile, my sister. I hear the truth. You're a winner with your brain, my brother, and a healer with your soul. I see the future in your hands, Niger, when you register and vote. We get power inside us, my brother. Don't be power for our people. This is not power of how to use our head. Come together. So stand up. Don't sit down and look. Baba says so.
No sit down look. No sit down look. No sit down look.
How could I not sit down look, oh?
Welcome back. You are watching The Candidate, Presidential Town Hall, Daria Media, and the Nigerian Television Authority, with the support of the MacArthur Foundation. We are in conversation with the presidential and vice presidential candidates of the ruling APC, the incumbent president, and of course the vice president, retired General Muhammadu Buhari, and Professor Yemi Osibajo. A quick reminder for those watching at home, you can still take part by sending your questions using the social media handles scrolling across the screen. We will do our best to ask as many questions as possible. Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, before the break, we took a few questions from members of the audience. There was a question about what your plans are for the Almajiri in the north. There was a question about the livestock plan. And finally, there was a question about the disability bill, because there are about 25 million people thought to live with some form of disability in Nigeria. People are interested in knowing what this government is going to do about improving their situation. Maybe we start with the Almajiri with Mr. President.
Yes, what the Almajiri case, I think we have to look at the 3 tiers of government responsibility: federal, the state, the local government. The allocation of resources, revenue allocation formula, and so on, relative to the resources available to the country, when there's a chance to, let's reach governments. So the question of Almajiri's case, this lack of virtually primary, the basic education, are all local government programs. So even if the center has extra money, they wouldn't take it and build classrooms, equip them, employ qualified teachers from the federal revenue, while it is the duty of the local government. If the local governments are not being given the money by the governors or by the state, then it's up to the local government to come together and scream loud enough for Nigerians to hear them, so that there will be proper allocation of resources by the constitutional means.
Mr. President,
that's for the Almajiris.
Yes, sir. Let me just ask a little follow-up questions regarding that. Part of the frustrations that some people have with the way Nigeria is structured is that we seem to have sometimes confusion. So technically, we'd sort of say something like primary education resides with local government. But then you have agencies like the Universal Basic Education Agency, which is a federal agency and which has some role to play in primary education. And part of this confusion is why people will say, for example, we need to restructure and move some things from exclusive list, from concurrent list to the residual list. What are your thoughts regarding restructuring, particularly in relation to education?
Well, my thought is that firstly, there must be a lot of education. And this I recommend, be led by the press, to expose what relationship, how effective the governments are spending to local governments. One is, from the center. If that is not done, then it's very difficult for the federal government under this dispensation to enforce education at all levels by respective states, either the state, the local government, or the center itself. I will give, I think, some examples. In some of the investigations, it was uncovered that local government chairmen were made to sign for the money that are supposed to be their allocation, but they will only be given about 25% of the money. The rest will be taken by the governor. There are investigations in some of the states that are showing that. So I am expecting the press, on behalf of the people, to make an in-depth investigation and expose corrupt governors, and local government chairmen.
Thank you, sir. Would you be willing to examine the UBEC funds? Because those reside with the federal government, yet they are actually meant for primary education. So they are normally disbursed, I believe, by the federal government.
Well, I think what has happened so far, anyway, UBEC, I think there are agencies of government, federal agencies, that in some senses support local government and states. But the bulk, clearly, primary education has been eyes squarely in the hands of local government. But I think with UBEC, what happened with UBEC is that UBEC has an arrangement where they say if the state, if there's 20 million, they'll say, well, the state should bring its own counterpart fund of a certain amount of money, 20% or 25%. Now, that percentage is what the states ought to bring to the table before have access to the UBEC fund. Most states never access the UBEC fund. They simply said they didn't have the counterpart fund.
But what has happened? Don't you find that problematic?
Excuse me. What has happened now is that from the Paris Club reforms that was given to the state, the federal government now paid off all of their counterpart funds. So all states can now access UBEC funds without any hindrance whatsoever.
Okay. Now, the other questions are to do with disability and with the livestock. The livestock plan, I think.
The disability.
Yeah, okay, we'll start with disability. Yes, Mr. President.
Well, I honestly don't remember this the plan being taken to the National Assembly. How much they have commented on it, send it back to the center. It's the same thing with the disability bill. There are so much with the National Assembly. And unfortunately, as I mentioned, I expect, honestly, it press through the elite to keep an eye activities on the bill's executive National Assembly. If the executive send a bill, they can hardly put it in the budget unless it is returned from the National Assembly with their comments or their recommendations.
So we will find out what's happening with that bill with the national.
But a lot of time has been wasted.
Right. Okay, Mr. President. Now, I'd like to do a little follow-up question regarding this life, because we got a question from a listener. I'll try and dig up. But they were asking, how do you intend to bring a permanence to the difficulties and conflict going on between farmers and herdsmen?
No,
so the conflict between farmers and herdsmen, yes, and herders.
Well, what happened started from Benue State, fortunately, and we foresaw that. When I say we, I mean the federal government. We asked the Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development to go to the archives, find out the gazettes from the First Republic, where those incredible leadership of the First Republic, there was cattle route, there was grazing areas, with limited resources, they put windmills, half dams, and even veterinary clinics. But subsequent very important personalities encroached on the cattle routes, the grazing areas, and if a herder has 200 cattle, they have just eaten, whichever their way to the water port, they will just go. And I think the Minister of Agriculture and Water Resources have produced the maps. Which one?
But these are old maps, and this is today's problem. So we might have had a solution to this many years ago in the 60s with the routes and everything. Clearly that solution is no longer tenable now. And so the issue is these are urgent problems facing now. People are dying, people are getting killed, conflict is breaking out. What are we going to do about it, like now?
What we are doing about, we have already started. We have to ask, especially the governors. The movement is from north to south, quite predictable. After harvest, so cattle have to move southward to water, pasture. And then our borders, for example, between Lake Chad and Benin Republic, about 1,400 kilometers, with Niger alone. And look at the Cameroon one. And effectively survey that border when structures were tampered with in terms of cattle grazing area. Very difficult. We have sent this in back to the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, to the governors, so that we can create these corridors. But for a government like Benue government, when they said they have banned cattle rearing or they have banned grazing, we are in a country, I expect our government to insist on the routes to be re-established, the grazing area. But to say that cattle cannot move, it is very difficult. Benue is complaining, but I understand they are already in Bielsa. From there, are they going into the Atlantic?
Okay, Mr. President, yeah, but can I just quickly, because you know,
let me add a comment to that. Part of what, because when the matter was referred to the government, I chaired the the National Economic Council. And part of the plan that the National Economic Council laid out for the livestock transformation, all of the governors in the so-called frontline states are also involved in. And I think that one of the very important points that emerged in the discussions at the National Economic Council was the fact that there was a need to ensure that we were able to create some access to places, to grazing areas. And I think that that's the point also that Mr. President is making, that in order to be, for instance, anywhere where cattle are, you must still have some kind of access, so that you then have an area where it could be a ranch, it could just be a place where you have earth dams, it could be a place where you just have water, where, whatever it is. And we then agreed with the governors that because federal government has no land, only state governments. We then agreed with the state governments that, okay, anyone that is willing, we will put together the resources. If private people want to put together the resources and build those areas, called ranches, grazing areas, whatever you call them, and people will pay appropriate fees, that areas will pay appropriate fees, use the facility, and go back whenever they want to go back, because clearly somebody has to bring those cattle at that point. And we tried to say that that was an interim phase, because as time goes on, you will eventually be able to stop grazing from one point to the other. But that will take time.
Yeah, well, so the point is basically Mr. President himself owes, cattle. Everybody knows. He's very proud of his cows in Daura and talks about them all the time. But the perception is that Mr. President is a little bit biased because these are his people that are involved, and that instead of facing the fact that in the 21st century there's really no room for the cattle rearing in the way we're doing it and coming up with modern ways of cattle rearing, we're trying to hold on to an old-fashioned way of rearing meat.
No, but you pointed out already. Let me be Mr. President's counsel. You pointed out already that he has his cattle ranch in a farm. I don't think that's old-fashioned. That I think is that is current. You have your somewhere. But I think that the matter really is one, as I said, that is within the province of the National Economic Council. And that's why the governors took it. Because the federal government cannot tell me what will happen in any state, because the states themselves pass laws on their land and the use of their land. We don't have land except federal land. So there's really no way that we can do much with that. And that's why we decided to hold the National Economic Council, set up a committee on the livestock transformation plan. And we're working with the state government. And many of the state governments have given land for purposes of ranching. They've given land as grazing areas. We're building earth dams in many of the departments. And I'm the chairman of that particular.
Now, the thing is this, though, when you think in terms of the problem farmers and herders going through, it's a problem that goes beyond the right of way, because obviously there's issues around climate change. And I am still a little bit confused about what the government policy is that underpins, the way we deal with issues around climate, which are sort of the long-term things that you must look at. You have to come up with a solution that is going to last.
I think that is precisely the point that is being made. That, let me explain, perhaps I need to go into a bit more detail about the work of the National Economic Council on this livestock transformation. As I said, the reason why we had to constitute the governors into where we had to constitute ourselves, the committee, was precisely because we recognized that the reason why we have all these clashes between herdsmen and farmers is because of desertification. It's because of all of the conflict over pasture, water. A lot of that is climate change related. Now, every state controls territory. Every state controls land. And under the Land Use Act, it is the state governor that has absolute control over the land of the state. It is the state governor that gives you permission, even the federal government, whatever you want to do on their land, they must give development control permission, even if it's on federal land. We have any land that's federal. Now, that's why we start with the state governors. We decided that, look, this is an issue that's almost seasonal, and it's getting worse now because of desertification. Now there's so, especially coming from the Sahel.
So I guess the question I was trying to ask was whether there's a policy around desertification and climate change and what the government is doing to mitigate this thing.
Of course. Of course, clearly there is. And one of the major policies is what is called the Green Wall Project. We have the Green Wall Project, basically to control desertification coming from. The Ministry of Environment has been working on that for years. Now, the other issue, of course, is that we're also cooperating with our neighbors on desertification issues. That's our neighbors in the northern part of in North Africa. We're also cooperating with northern part of West Africa, Niger, Chad, etc. And then there's also the project to recharge the Lake Chad, because that's one of the very important projects. And Mr. President is the one who particularly pushed the Lake Chad project to recharge it, because, as you know, the Lake Chad is almost completely shrunk from about 35,000 square meters, about 1,300 or so square meters. So we need to recharge the Lake Chad from the Congo Basin, and that's one of the projects.
Okay, before we go for a break, I want you to just quickly clarify for me, what is the federal government policy when it comes to mitigating this conflict? Is it to have ranches, or is it to continue having these grazing corridors? Is it a mixture of the two?
For now, what we have is a mixture. What we have is a mixture now. But ultimately, what the governors are saying, in that in their respective states, they will provide for those who want to do the business of ranching sufficient space to do. In the interim, they are building earth dams so that cattle coming from the north, especially going towards the riverbank, and you find that a lot of these conflicts are in those areas, are able to, even before they get anywhere near, able to access earth dams, water from the earth, access veterinary care, and all of that. So the long-term plan, of course, is to eventually create ranches, but ranches have to be privately owned. Government cannot. But at the moment, you can't just suddenly one day say, no more grazing, that's the end of it. Immediately, that doesn't happen anywhere. And in all of the places where the problem has been solved, because the Governor's Council, that committee, we studied it very carefully. We looked at everywhere where the problem has been solved. It was a gradual process. It's that same gradual process that we're going through.
Okay, we will take a quick break. Don't go away.
A popular saying in Nigeria goes that at the time a cockerel matures, it begins to crow to tell the world the time of day. This makes a crucial premise for all of us who have come of age, the youths, to lend our voices to a nation set to flip a new page, like the chance to vote and be voted for, whether being a youth, a woman, or a person with disability, and to do this in unity. And to anyone who hasn't been confident enough to exercise these rights, I beg, step out of the dark and come into the light. I mean, you're participating in the electoral
of defending the nation.
Are also they have a face, they are responsible, and also they should be relied.
The national reached first. We may go in the call, but what we have